Ok, donc on va commencer. Donc bienvenue à tout le monde. Donc nous avons la Sangha polonaise avec nous. On va faire une courte présentation en français, suivie d'une courte présentation en polonais. Donc je vais commencer pour la Sangha française. Donc juste pour vous aider à vous brancher sur le canal de traduction français. Donc ceux qui ont besoin de la traduction en français, vous allez...
Poczekaj,
Ah, alors,
ale
déjà,
ja
on va
nic
vous
nie
demander
słyszę,
d'éteindre vos
dlatego ja nic
micros.
nie słyszę.
J'essaie de le faire au fur et à mesure, mais on va vous demander de bien laisser vos micros
Poczekaj, poczekaj,
fermés.
poczekaj.
Ok. Voilà. Donc, les micros vont rester fermés pendant toute la réunion. Donc, en bas de votre écran, vous allez voir une petite barrette d'outils. Sur cette barrette d'outils, vous allez voir apparaître une petite map monde, une petite terre, et vous allez la sélectionner et vous allez voir apparaître plusieurs langues, donc français, polonais et audio original. Donc si vous avez besoin de la traduction française, vous allez sélectionner le canal français. Cette réunion sera enregistrée, donc vous pourrez aussi avoir accès à l'enregistrement. Si vous avez des difficultés techniques, vous pouvez écrire dans le chat à Hélène Tara Mandala France pour les Français et Ivona Kandro pour le polonais, mais elle vous le dira en polonais. Donc, je vais vous présenter Tulku Ösel Dorje. Donc, Tulku Ösel Dorje est né en Italie, de Costanzo a Lione et de l'Amazzultrim à Lione. Depuis sa naissance, il a été immergé dans le Dharma. À 21 ans, après ses études, il a commencé une série de longues retraites solitaires, strictes, qui ont duré 4 années. Après quoi, il s'installe au Népal et étudie la philosophie bouddhiste et le tibétain à l'Institut Rangchung Yeshe. Pendant son séjour en Asie, il entreprend et achève le pèlerinage traditionnel des 108 pratiques de Chö dans les charniers, dans les montagnes du Ladakh en tant que yogi errant. Pendant 4 mois. Il a été reconnu par A.dzom Rinpoche en 2003 comme une réincarnation de Yudra Ningpo. Pour éviter les obstacles, sa reconnaissance a été gardée secrète pendant de nombreuses années. Et en mars 2019, il a été officiellement intronisé par A.dzom Rinpoche et a reçu l'autorisation d'enseigner et de diffuser les précieux termas de son maître et d'autres enseignements en Occident. Au cours de l'été 2019, il a été intronisé par Lama Tsultrim en tant que Dorje Gyaltsap de Mandala et est désormais le lama résident à Mandala.
Now in Polish. Witamy wszystkich serdecznie w imieniu polskiej sangi i francuskiej Tara Mandala. Witamy naszego drogiego Tulku. Krótkie instrukcje do Zoom. Wszyscy uczestnicy są wyciszeni i pozostaną wyciszeni podczas trwania spotkania. Jeżeli chcecie coś napisać, napiszcie do mnie. Jestem dziś waszym tech supportem, wsparciem technicznym na czacie. W niektórych momentach czat będzie otwarty dla wszystkich, jednak nie będzie opcji prywatnego czatowania z poszczególnymi osobami. Aby zadać pytanie głosowo, kliknij reakcję u dołu ekranu i wybierz dłoń. Teraz krótkie wyjaśnienie funkcji tłumaczenia. Na dole macie ikonkę z globusem. Możesz wybrać swój kanał językowy, czyli polski, jeśli chcesz. Wtedy oryginalny język będzie słyszany w 20%, a polski w 80%. Możesz wybrać też oryginalny dźwięk, jeśli chcesz słyszeć tylko angielski, ale nie wybieraj wtedy English, tylko oryginalny język. Teraz krótkie przedstawienie Tulku Ösela Dorje. Tulku Ösel jest lamą rezydentem, czyli regentem Wadży, głównym nauczycielem w Mandala, Colorado. Ukończył 4-letnie odosobnienie i posiada tytuł magistra studiów buddyjskich. Tulku Ösel, jak wielu z Was wie, jest synem lamy Tsutrin, co oznacza, że miał wielkie szczęście być zaangażowany w dharmę od urodzenia. W wieku 20 lat praktykował samotne odosobnienia na szczycie góry Mandala w chatce odosobnieniowej. Odbył kilka pielgrzymek po Azji i praktykując w jaskiniach, w miejscach mocy, odbył także tradycyjną pielgrzymkę do 108 pól kremacyjnych w górach Ladaku, podczas której jako wędrujący jogin przez 4 miesiące praktykował praktykę Cie. Odbył też inne odległe pielgrzymki do świętych miejsc góry Rinpoche w Nepalu i Indiach. W Nepalu przez 7 lat mieszkał obok wielkiej stupy Buddha i studiował tam filozofię buddyjską. Po ukończeniu studiów wrócił do Mandala po 10 latach. Założył rodzinę w międzyczasie i wraz z żoną jest ojcem 2 synów. Jego ścieżka praktyki już od ponad 20 lat skupia się głównie na termach A.dzoma Rinpoche. To jest ważna informacja. W roku 2003 został rozpoznany przez A.dzoma Paylo Rinpoche jako reinkarnacja jogina Judry Ningpo, który żył w Tybecie w VIII wieku w czasach guru Rinpoche. Aby uniknąć przeszkód, jego rozpoznanie było otrzymywane w tajemnicy przez wiele lat. W swoje urodziny w marcu 2019 roku w pełni księżyca został formalnie intronizowany przez A.dzoma Paylo Rinpoche i otrzymał wskazanie, aby nauczać i szerzyć cenne termy i inne nauki swojego guru na zachodzie. Dziękuję bardzo, dziękujemy Tulku, że tu jest i Wam wszystkim. I rozpoczynamy. We don't hear you, Tulku.
I was just saying we've become better experts at these at Zoom. I'll begin again. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. And I really want to thank the Polish Sangha and the French Sangha for organizing this event. And I'm actually very excited to this year be able to visit France and Poland. So I've taught before in Poland, but it was virtual, so I'm looking forward to be in person. So before we begin, let's begin by giving rise to bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is this aspiration to not leave a single sentient being behind as we progress on our path to enlightenment. This profound wish or aspiration to benefit all sentient beings and guide them to complete Buddhahood is the essence of our bodhicitta aspiration. So together as a group, we give rise to this aspiration. So let's put our hands together like this. And so we adopt what's known as the one-pointed mudra, symbolizing our one-pointed intention to benefit all sentient beings. And we'll just give rise to this intention silently for a moment as we rest in meditation. Thank you. So I've been asked to say a few words about this upcoming retreat this year in Europe and different countries on the Dakini Ngondro of the Ösel Nyingtig. So the Dakini Ngondro is a new practice that was recently revealed by A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche. So in that respect, this is a fresh Dharma that has manifested in our world to address the needs of these difficult times. And I think we can just see what's happening in the world. So whether wherever we are witnessing, let's say, I believe, more hardship than normal. And Buddhists and Hindus, they call these times that we are living in the Kali Yuga, or the degenerate age. So this dark period is actually associated with moral and spiritual decline, environmental issues, and social unrest. So these ideas are not only discussed by Buddhists and Hindus, but they're also discussed by many other religious traditions. During these dark times, it's extremely rare for a great being like a Buddha to appear, and even more difficult for them to help sentient beings. When we look at the news and see all the suffering that's happening in the world, how can you not feel some sadness and, let's say, being disheartened with what's happening everywhere? But I have to say, even within, let's say, all this suffering that's happening in the world, through the power of the Buddha's compassion and aspirations, the teachings of the Dharma have endured. And more importantly, his followers, by practicing the Buddha Dharma, are still reaching enlightenment. And countless beings are being benefited still. And so when I think about that aspect, that actually gives me hope. That gives me hope for what we can do in our own lives, and also gives me hope in how we can still change things in the world. I've had the great fortune in my lifetime actually to meet an enlightened being. And his name is A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche. And these days he's living in Tibet. And I have no doubt that actually he's a living Buddha. And all I've ever seen him do is constantly work for the welfare of all sentient beings. Rinpoche is considered a Tulku, or a reincarnation of the 8th century king of Tibet, whose name was Trizin Jetsun. So Tulkus are bodhisattvas who have made this commitment to be reborn in this world to benefit sentient beings as they progress on the path to enlightenment. Sometimes they're actual real enlightened beings who manifest in this world as emanations, but in general, what the term Tulku in Tibetan, which means Nirmanakaya, what a Tulku is a stream of consciousness that's, let's say, going through time and progressing on the path to enlightenment. And so as Tulkus are progressing on that path, whenever they are reborn in the human body, they need to be trained. They need to, let's say, be nurtured. And maybe we can say in the crucible of retreat, they need to be cooked. And so, but every now and then, extraordinary beings are actually born in this world as blazing Buddhas. And that's A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche. Right from the start, Rinpoche was such a being. He was really extraordinary from birth. Just being in his presence, your mind is altered for the better. And so his Tulku lineage goes back to the time of Padmasambhava. This is in the 8th century Tibet. And so Padmasambhava, or what Padmasambhava means in Sanskrit, is the lotus born. Padmasambhava was an extraordinary teacher. And in Tibet, he was known as the second coming of the Buddha. He had extraordinary powers. And it was King Trizin Jetsun who invited Padmasambhava to Tibet to establish the precious Dharma in the land of the snow. Padmasambhava is considered an enlightened being with extraordinary power and miraculous abilities. Through the power of his primary student's aspirations, whose name was Yeshe Tsogyal, she was able to collect all his teachings, catalog them, and then offer them to Guru Rinpoche or Padmasambhava for future generations. Together, Padmasambhava and Yeshe Tsogyal hid these teachings all over Tibet, and even in the minds of those individuals who were present there at the time. And so these teachings, they were essentially put a seed in the mind of these individuals, and then this seed would ripen in future times, in future lifetimes. And at that time, when Padmasambhava was giving these teachings to these individuals, he would essentially make the prophecy of when the time was right. In this time period, you will benefit these sentient beings with this teaching. So these hidden teachings became known as Dharma treasures, or as they're called in Tibet, termas. So these Dharma treasures, or terma, have refreshed the Dharma lineage of Padmasambhava from the 11th century to this present day. Whether they were man or woman, these treasures were revealed by those who were called tertuns, or treasure revealers. So if you remember when I first began, I said that the Dakini Ngondro was a fresh teaching or practice. So what I meant when I said that was that this practice was a recently revealed Dharma treasure, or terma, by A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche. In 2007, when Rinpoche was visiting the birthplace of Yeshe Tsogyal, he had a visionary encounter with her. And in that moment, he actually met her face to face. So enlightened beings can transcend space and time. They've gone beyond that, let's say, causal existence. And at that time, he received directly from Yeshe Tsogyal her heart essence. In many ways, these were the expression of her enlightened intent to benefit sentient beings. This practice, that's known as the Dakini Ngondro, focuses on Yeshe Tsogyal, who reached enlightenment in her lifetime, practicing the teachings that she received from her root guru, or from her root lama, Padmasambhava. Padmasambhava and Yeshe Tsogyal had a very special connection. The guru-disciple bond between Padmasambhava and Yeshe Tsogyal was really special, or sacred. And through their connection, extraordinary things were able to be accomplished. Padmasambhava, imparting the highest teachings to Yeshe Tsogyal, allowed those teachings then to be, let's say, saved for future generations. But not only that, she was actually his spiritual consort. And out of all of the students that Padmasambhava had in Tibet, it is Yeshe Tsogyal who was the only one who reached the level of his realization. So this Dakini Ngondro focuses on the enlightened Dakini Yeshe Tsogyal. So here I have our text. And so I thought I would begin actually by introducing what is the Dakini Ngondro, by starting to explain just the title. And through the title, the whole Ngondro actually can be, let's say, expressed. So our text begins with, from the Ösel Nyingtig. So the Ösel Nyingtig is a set of, let's say, a collection of teachings or termas that were bestowed to A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche through different enlightened encounters with different enlightened beings like Guru Rinpoche, Yeshe Tsogyal, or Troma Nagmo. And so within the Ösel Nyingtig are actually several teachings, not just this Dakini Ngondro, but it's the Dakini Ngondro is the gateway for us to enter into this extraordinary lineage. So in the Ösel Nyingtig, we have the Dakini Ngondro. Then we have the means for accomplishing Yeshe Tsogyal. That's another teaching. We also then have another practice known as the means for accomplishing Troma Nagmo. And then the extraordinary practice that is actually a series of teachings all the way through the highest teachings of Dzogchen, known as the secret instructions. And then we have also the Che practice of Troma Nagmo. And then this year, we will also be teaching the means for accomplishing the Guru, which is connected with Guru Padmasambhava. So all these different teachings belong to what's known as the Ösel Nyingtig. So Ösel means luminosity. Nyingtig means the heart, essence. And so what is this Ösel Nyingtig? Well, this is, let's say, the essentialized luminosity or enlightened wisdom of all the Nyingtig traditions. They're all, let's say, essentialized or subsumed within this extraordinary cycle of teachings. So that's a little bit on the Ösel Nyingtig. And now let's talk about this Dakini Ngondro. So I'll explain the Dakini Ngondro based on the title. And so the title is The Dakini Ngondro, Known as the Excellent Path of Great Bliss. So let's begin by, let's say, opening up what Dakini means and how we can understand that in the context of this practice. In Tibetan Buddhism, a Dakini is a female embodiment of enlightened energy and wisdom. The Tibetan word for Dakini is Ngondro, which means a sky dancer or a sky goer. So Ka means sky and Dro means go. So that's how you get the sky goer. But it really has this connotation of the sky dancer. And we'll explain a little bit more what that means based on A.dzom Rinpoche's definition. But I'll say that later. So there are different levels of Dakini in Tibetan Buddhism. So the title can be used for a woman who has, let's say, spiritual attainment. So she's a Dakini, a Ngondro. In Tantric practices, Dakinis can be meditational deities for accomplishing enlightened activity. They're the enlightened deity of a Mandala. But on a secret level, Dakinis are manifestations of the basic space of phenomena, or what in Sanskrit is known as the Dharma Dhatu. And they are also the Dharmakaya mind. And so the Dharmakaya mind, Dharmakaya, it actually belongs to three groups: Dharmakaya, Sambhogakaya, and Nirmanakaya. So the Dharmakaya aspect is the empty aspect of the enlightened essence. The Sambhogakaya is the beginning of the manifestation of that enlightened essence. And it's, let's say, more luminous. The Dharmakaya is more empty. Sambhogakaya is more luminous. And the Nirmanakaya is the unity of both that emptiness and luminosity manifesting in the physical world. Right? The Nirmanakayas are the ones that we can interact with in our bodies. So they are emanations that manifest in our world. And so a Dakini, again, is the manifestation of basic space of phenomena and the Dharmakaya mind on that secret level. And so in our practice, Yeshit Sogyal embodies actually all three levels of what I just described as meaning Dakini, right? Because historically, she is a woman who attained spiritual accomplishment in the 8th century. And in our practices, she is a meditational deity for accomplishing enlightened activity or enlightenment. But most importantly, she is a manifestation of the basic space of phenomena, manifesting as the Dharmakaya form of Yeshit Sogyal. So A.dzom Rinpoche, he poetically defines Dakini in the ultimate sense as the union of intrinsic awareness, or Rigpa, and emptiness, right? That union of Rigpa and emptiness flying through the space of primordial wisdom. That's what the Dakini is on the ultimate level, and that's actually who Yeshit Sogyal is embodying, that wisdom. So that's a little bit on Dakini. Now let's talk about what Ngondro means. Well, Ngondro means preliminary practices or foundational practices. And this is, this translation is derived from two words, ngun and then dro. So ngun means before and dro means to go. So that which comes before, we could say, or that which goes before. So a Ngondro is actually a series of practices designed to help purify your mind so that you can advance your spiritual development. So that's essentially the reason why we engage in Ngondro, right? It purifies our mind and helps advance our spiritual development so that we can then actually practice more advanced forms of Vajrayana practice. That's the purpose of Ngondro. Ultimately, a Ngondro lays the foundation for enlightenment. And so from that perspective, actually, Ngondro is incredibly important. Because if we lack that foundational practice or that foundational basis for our practice to develop and flourish, then we don't know exactly what the result will yield, right? Because the very beginning of our practice or of our, let's say, of our path is shaky. It's on shaky ground. It's not on a stable foundation. And although we use the word preliminaries for in Ngondro, this is actually misleading because the practice takes the fruition as the basis of the path. What is that fruition? Well, it's actually the realization of emptiness and Rigpa being indivisible. So we take that as the basis of our path. So from that perspective then, it's actually a complete practice for attaining enlightenment. And so there are different, let's say, levels or like an outer, inner, and secret aspects of the Ngondro practice. So on an outer level, the Ngondro includes such practices that turn the mind toward the Dharma or toward our spiritual practice. And then there are more the inner practices for purifying our neurotic emotions and generating merit. And then the Ngondro culminates in the profound practice of Guru Yoga, which is a very special practice in our lineage here because we receive the blessings in our body, speech, and mind through the enlightened feminine connected with Yeshit Sogya. Each of these practices in the Ngondro help to awaken our innate spiritual qualities in a progressive step-by-step approach. And this approach is actually very important because although, let's say, the opportunity for instantaneous realization is possible, for the majority of us, we need to take this step-by-step approach. And if we take this approach, then we can feel more confident in the ultimate result that we attain, because we are following in the footsteps of those that came before us. So the practice is known as the excellent path of great bliss. Why? Because it takes the primordial wisdom of basic space as the basis of the path. So think of this practice as like a trail map to unlock the profound wisdom found within yourself. It's a journey that we begin, and the way we enter is through the Dakini Ngondro. And so, what are you doing? Well, you're actually awakening that great bliss of the Dakini in the ultimate sense that's innate to your body, speech, and mind. And so this is the gift that Yeshit Sogya bestows upon us. The Dakini Ngondro is a doorway through which we can attain enlightenment in this very lifetime. So if you embark on this path, get ready for this journey into the heart essence of wisdom and bliss. The ultimate significance of what is meant by Dakini is actually what we encounter in this lineage. This practice is so fresh. We are so close to the lineage, right? To the source. This is exceptional, right? We have Guru Rinpoche and Yeshit Sogya, who offered this teaching to A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche at the time when he was King Trizin Jetsun. In 2007, that was awoken within his mind stream, And actually in that awakening, in that direct encounter with Guru Rinpoche and Yeshit Sogyal, then that lineage is instantly made direct. Right? It goes from Guru Rinpoche, Yeshit Sogyal to A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche. And this is really exceptional, how close we are to the origin of this lineage. So oftentimes, when you, let's say, if you were to do a Ngondro in another tradition, you'll recite the lineage prayer. And when you recite the lineage prayer, there are many in that lineage, right? We're reciting many names who came before us. But here, it's Guru Rinpoche, A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche, right? It's that direct aspect, indivisible with Yeshit Sogyal, because it is Yeshit Sogyal who bestowed upon Rinpoche this heart essence, her heart essence. So the blessings of Guru Rinpoche and Yeshit Sogyal can actually still really be felt, can be experienced in this practice because it has not been corrupted through time. We are at the beginning of this lineage, and because of that, then you can actually still feel the warmth of the blessings is incredibly direct. And I think many who have practiced these teachings have experienced that directness, that intimacy that we can still feel with the origin of the lineage, with Guru Rinpoche and Yeshit Sogyal. And most importantly in this life with A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche, who as a terton is actually an emanation of Guru Rinpoche, right? The tertons are enacting the enlightened activity of Guru Rinpoche. So in that sense, they are emanations of Padmasambhava. So that is a little bit on what I wanted to share on the Ösel Nyingtig. But there have also, let's say, questions have been sent to me to answer. And let me just pull it up. And then we will also have the opportunity to ask questions real time. Okay, the first question I have here is, I'm already committed to another lineage, but I feel a strong link. Do I receive this practice as a blessing? Well, I think that's an important question, actually. Because we tend to have, let's say, a lot of practice commitments if we have been in the Dharma for a long time. And so, what do you do? Well, I think a lot of things come down to our karma, right? And since this is a terma, and it's a very fresh terma, then those who connect to these teachings actually have that karma. They have that karma to receive these instructions. Excuse me. So what do you do? Well, just because you receive this teaching doesn't mean you actually necessarily have to commit to practicing it every day. That commitment is yours to make. It's not a requirement. You're welcome to receive the teaching as merely a blessing, or let's say an exploration of whether you want to make a commitment to this practice. And then ultimately, that is a commitment that you need to make and a decision that you need to make. So I think if you're, let's say, feel that connection, then I would come receive this teaching and see what it means to you. And then if you feel that it means something important to you, then you can take on the practice commitment. The next question is, how long is the daily practice? Which is, I think, always a very funny question, because ultimately that really depends on you, on what you can afford in your day. But what I encourage everyone to take on as a daily, let's say, practice commitment is to try to at least put aside an hour of your day for meditation. You know, there's an ocean of profound Dharma, but if we don't put it into practice, then we can never receive its actual benefit. And although, let's say, there's great blessing in receiving teachings and empowerments, the real blessing is to engage with those teachings in our daily lives through the cultivation of meditation and integration of these extraordinary teachings that we receive. That's how we receive the ultimate benefit of what we're engaging in. So I would recommend that your daily practice commitment is somewhere between 45 minutes and an hour. And the Dakini Ngondro is actually succinct. It's not very long. I mean, it still has all these different practices in it, but it's not extensive, right? There are some practice lineages that are very long, but this is because it's the essentialized essence, right, of all Nyingtig teachings. It's actually very succinct. And the Dakini Ngondro is comprised of, first, what is known as the 4 mind trainings, right? And that awaken you, your inspiration to devote yourself to the practice of the Dharma. That's the point of the 4 mind trainings, or the contemplations that turn your mind to the Dharma. And then after that is the actual practice of, let's say, entering the path, which is the practice of going for refuge. Right? That is how we enter the gateway of the Dharma, is through refuge. But then the way we progress, or the way we walk on the path, is through our bodhicitta aspiration. And so there's that aspect. And if you can, right? Ideally, one would engage in this practice by offering prostrations. In refuge and bodhicitta, you would offer prostrations 100,000 times. But in the Dakini Ngondro, the main requirement is not the accumulation of the different practices, but actually the more in-depth aspect of the practice, which is the experience of engaging in the practice. So what does that mean? Well, that means that we're not like basing our meditation on numbers. We're basing our meditation on experience, on the direct experience that the practice is awakening within us. And so it's not a Ngondro that's based on the accumulations. That being said, I really do encourage you to go through the accumulations 100,000 times, each one, because once you do that, you really do establish that proper foundation. You don't actually come out doing Ngondro with 500,000 times for each of these, let's say, different practices. You don't come out of it the same. You do feel the benefit. It's extraordinary. And personally, Ngondro has been one of my favorite practices. And there's, like, what is the one thing you would take on the desert island if you only could take one thing? Well, for me, it would be Ngondro. Ngondro would be the very practice that I would take on a desert island, because it's a complete path to liberation. So then after refuge and bodhicitta, there's the purification practice of Vajrasattva. And this aspect of Vajrasattva is actually based on the Dzogchen view and connected with Guru Yoga. It's a really beautiful and very special Vajrasattva practice. And then after Vajrasattva, we have the practice for accumulating merit. So we need both wisdom and merit to reach enlightenment. These two need to go hand in hand. And so again, this is the skillful means of the Ngondro, because within the Ngondro is the Mandala offering, the practice of offering a Mandala. And here again, this mandala is actually is based on Dzogchen. And for those who have practiced Dzogchen and know Trikshya and Togyal, this mandala offering really speaks to that. And it's quite beautiful. And then we have the practice of severance, or chi, which is essentially a practice to get over our ego fixation, our self-identity, right? The fixation of our self-identity and the reification of outer and inner phenomena. And so this Chud practice, we engage in that, let's say, a very succinct practice of Chi. And then once we have gone beyond our ego fixation, well, then we have the extraordinary practice of Guru Yoga. And the Guru Yoga here is connected with Yeshit Sogyal. But not only that, within Yeshit Sogyal, in the different chakras of Yeshit Sogyal, we encounter different enlightened deities. So we encounter Samantabhadri, we encounter Yumchenmo, the Great Mother, we meet Chomanagmo, we also encounter Machik Lapdrum and Aryatara. And not only that, we also meet Guru Rinpoche, who was Yeshit Sogyal's primary guru. And so all of these deities are present within Yeshit Sogyal. And as we are engaging in the Guru Yoga, we can connect with each one, either simultaneously or one by one. And so in that aspect, it's actually a very special practice, a beautiful practice. And then at the end, we receive the 4 empowerments directly from these wisdom beings. And those 4 empowerments help nurture and awaken our innate enlightened qualities within us. Okay, so that's a little bit on that. So those, let's say, those series of practices, you can do the whole practice within 45 minutes, actually. But ideally, at least an hour. And if you can do more, then please, one can offer more. All right, then the next question here is, how can I know this cycle is meant for me? Well, it's actually, how do you know? I mean, this comes down to one's, let's say, attraction or intuitive feeling of, let's say, a desire to know more, right? That initial, that interest, that's karma, right? That interest that, let's say, inspires our desire to learn more is our karmic connection. And so that's how you know whether this is a practice you should look into or not, because it has to be something that you're interested in. And so if you join, if you receive, first of all, the Dakini Ngondro, and then you join our Ösel Nyingtig program, the practice commitment that one, let's say, makes is to engage in this practice on a daily basis to the best of your ability. And so that's what's known as the practice samaya. Now, I recognize, first of all, being a householder, married with 2 children, that life can be very, let's say, intense, and it's not always easy finding time to practice every day. And so if by mistake, or maybe you get sick, right? One never knows what kind of obstacles you encounter. If that happens, at the very least, you can just put the practice on your head, right? Or just read through the practice if you can't actually practice it. But the idea here is, with your practice commitment, is to maintain that daily connection with the lineage, because it's that daily connection that actually helps the qualities flourish within you. And so if you were to miss a day, well, then you would have the opportunity just to offer a dzok offering or a feast offering. And in so doing, then you reestablish your motivation to practice every day, and your commitment is purified and made whole. So that's what would happen if you didn't fulfill your samaya. But for those who maintain their daily practice, and then every year, then they would be able to receive the next instruction within the Ösel Nyingtig. So if I commit to the Ösel Nyingtig and commit to the daily practice, and I have an emergency, is there a way to keep the samaya? Yes, like I said, at the very least, you can just put it on your head in those situations. Then the next question is, will I be able to address my questions to you directly if I have any issues in my practice? Yes. For the most part, throughout the year, I make myself available every Wednesday. I have like hours that I see people, and you'll be given like a link to my calendar, and you schedule your own interviews. And that's whenever there's an opening, one is able to take that time slot. But this year we are also, let's say, changing a little bit the dynamic, because there will also be what's known as Kalyana Mitras, or spiritual friends, who, and these individuals have actually been practicing the Ösel Nyingtig for the last 4 years, and they have done the Dakini Ngondro and the subsequent practices. And so these students and teachers, they will also be available to you in your local sanghas. And so let's say we're excited to have that new opportunity for the Kalyana Mitras to support their local sanghas. And that hasn't been available in the past, but we are now at a place where there are many people who have received these teachings. So it's time to, let's say, open our container to those who have been walking this path with us to support the greater Sangha. Will I have to do solitary retreats during this cycle? Well, let's say the word have to, no. One does not have to do anything. It's a choice that one makes to, if you wish to engage in solitary retreat. Ideally, we do retreat, yes. I highly encourage everyone to put time aside in their lives every year to go into a period of extensive practice, because it's just different, right? Maintaining a daily meditation is important, because whatever, let's say, level of realization or meditative equipoise you've developed, well, that daily practice is maintenance on that experience. But through, let's say, going into deep and long retreat, there you're not just maintaining, you're actually cultivating and bringing forth those qualities within you in a more direct and a direct way, instead of just maintaining. But it's not required. That's not necessarily what is being required. What is being required, if you're in the program, is your daily commitment. And that's not for me. That's actually for you, right? That commitment is so that the qualities that are within you are actually being developed, so that you can receive the actual benefit of this practice. Is it possible to commit to this cycle when I have young children? Well, when you have children, they have to be our priority, right? This is, there's no question in that. We, as parents, we put the benefit of our children before ourselves. But can you do both? I believe, yes, you can do both. And like I said, I have 2 kids and have a lot of responsibility, and I do my best to maintain my daily practice. So is it easy? No, it's not easy. But being a parent is not easy. And so, but it's a very valuable and beautiful path if you can bring the two together. I did a lot of retreat in my 20s, and I used to think, let's say I had developed patience and discipline during those years. But I have to say, having children has been very humbling. And in that process, made me a better practitioner to be honest. Actually, where am I at? And, you know, the advice for parents is to count to 10 before you respond to your children if you're having a hard time. So that's an aspect of mindfulness that we have to develop. Okay, so what will be the spiritual result of concluding 1 year of Dakini Ngondro? Well, as with anything, that really depends on one's motivation and commitment to their practice. So if you spend the whole year just putting the text to your head, well, then that is, let's say, proportional to the benefit that you receive. Of course, there is some like a karmic benefit, and one receives blessings, but maybe it's not as apparent as somebody who really, let's say, goes for it and every day is engaging in the practice a couple hours a day, right? There was a mother that I knew who used to wake up every day at 4 a.m. and do the Ngondro, and still did all her other, let's say, responsibilities throughout the day, but she just made that commitment to wake up at 4 a.m. and she would do prostrations and all the different practices. And as a mother, she completed the Ngondro in a year or two, but she really dedicated herself. And so it's really proportional to the effort you make, is proportional to the benefit that you receive. So what is the spiritual result? Well, the spiritual result is you begin to awaken your awareness, the Rigpa, right? Our innate intrinsic awareness. We begin to understand what that is, and once we have, let's say, those glimpses, then we begin to cultivate that on the path on a daily basis. What does it mean that the practice is permeated with the Dzogchen view? Well, there are different, let's say, traditions of Tibetan Buddhism, and the practice that we are, let's say, our lineage has to do with a sub-school or within Tibetan Buddhism, which is known as the Nyingma. And so the Nyingma in Tibetan means old school. So the Nyingmapas, those who practice the Nyingma teachings, they belong to the original school of Tibetan Buddhism that was established in the 8th century by Padmasambhava. So those are the Nyingmapas. And so in the Nyingma tradition, and also in the Bön tradition, there are the teachings of Dzogchen, or what's known as, let's say these days it's been popularized as the Great Perfection, but it's actually, a better translation would be the Great Completeness, because everything is complete or subsumed within it, and is perfect in that sense. So the Dzogchen view takes the unity of Rigpa and emptiness as the basis of the path. And so how does that permeate our whole path? Well, it's a little hard, let's say, to explain here in this moment, but the Dzogchen view is the unity of awareness or intrinsic awareness and emptiness. And we apply that in what is known as the view, meditation, and conduct. And so this view permeates these three levels. What does it mean that this practice, we meet the sacred feminine, and what does the sacred feminine mean? It's a good question. Well, let's say there are many different kinds of Ngondro. So the Longchen Nyingtig, which is a very, let's say, popular Ngondro within the Nyingma tradition, was revealed by Jigme Limpa. And the primary, let's say, figure who we relate to within the Longchen Nyingtig, right, and especially in the Longchen Nyingtig Ngondro, is Guru Rinpoche, a Yabyum with Yeshe Tsogyal. So they're indivisible, right? Indivisible aspects of emptiness and luminosity. And so in the Longchen Nyingtig, Guru Rinpoche is our primary figure, right, that we relate to. And so in that aspect, there's both the male and the female, right? But there are others where it's just a male figure, right, or the enlightened masculine that we relate to. But here, the main, let's say, the main refuge is Yeshe Tsogyal. So Yeshe Tsogyal is feminine, and she is a historical figure in the history of Tibet. And like I said, she reached enlightenment. And so here in this practice, we're actually engaging with Yeshe Tsogyal's enlightened mind, or the Dharmakaya aspect of Yeshe Tsogyal. And so that's how we are engaging within the sacred feminine. But not only that, then there were all these other, let's say, chakra deities who were also present. And those were all, let's say, aspects that Yeshe Tsogyal is connected with, right? Like Machik Labdrung, she is considered an emanation of Yeshe Tsogyal. And so all these different deities are connected with Yeshe Tsogyal, but they are embodiments of the enlightened feminine. And so if we, let's say, if we wanted to like understand this in binary as two, right? There's the enlightened masculine and the enlightened feminine. So the enlightened feminine represents the empty aspect, right? And then the masculine is the apparent aspect or form. And so these two are actually inseparable. You can't have the enlightened masculine without the enlightened feminine. And the enlightened feminine is also inseparable from the enlightened masculine. But the difference, let's say, within the practice is more the aspect of what you're relating to, whether it's more that empty enlightened quality or that apparent enlightened quality. But we have to understand that they're always indivisible. We can never separate them, because that separation is the duality that has caused our, let's say, our samsaric or our cyclic existence. This like cycle of birth, old age, sickness, and death that we continue to circle in. That is difficult. Okay. What changes in Tulku's life, I guess that's me, related to the Dakini Ngondro practice did I notice? Well, the Dakini Ngondro, let's say, I've had some time to enjoy this practice over the years. And the Dakini Ngondro appeared, actually, was put down on paper because of this request that Lama Tsotrang made to A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche, or A.dzom Rinpoche as we call him. She said that she has many students. She was telling Rinpoche that are women, and that students were asking if there was a Ngondro that was based on the enlightened feminine, because what was, let's say, being offered was, let's say, representational primarily of the enlightened masculine. And Rinpoche said, oh, that's very auspicious, because I just met with Yeshe Tsogyal this year. And so this is this quality of interdependence, right? The interdependence that comes together, that is necessary for termas to be revealed. So if we think of historically of what happened in the Buddha's life, this quality of requesting for the teachings was very important, right? And so that's why, let's say, ritualistically, whenever we receive teachings, we always make the request for the teachings. And so that request, right, that connection was established by Lama Tsotrang, and the interdependence came together in that moment for then Rinpoche to offer what he had received. And so in that time, which was 2007, then Rinpoche then wrote out this Dakini Ngondro. And then, unfortunately, after 2008, things have become, let's say, a little more restricted in Tibet, and A.dzom Rinpoche has not been able to leave the country. And so that initial like turning, right, of that wheel of the Dharma, although myself, Lama Soltram, Lama Rigzin, or Lama Ann Klein, we practiced it. We received this lineage from Rinpoche in 2007, but it wasn't really until recently, I think in maybe 2018, when these teachings were first actually being taught openly in the West. Up until that time period, we were practicing secretly, within our daily practices. And so, like I've said to you, the one requirement that Rinpoche, let's say, asked of us when we received these teachings was to practice it every day for a year. That's what he asked. And so I did that. I practiced it every day for a year. And I even did some accumulations of prostrations, bodhicitta, refuge, and mandala, and so on. Right? I engaged also with that aspect of the accumulation. But the effect it had on me was really opening up the Ösel Nyingtig. I really felt that connection to the lineage of the Ösel Nyingtig. And the more I practice the Ngondro of Yeshe Tsogyal, the closer I got to her, and most importantly, to this enlightened lineage of Guru Rinpoche, Yeshe Tsogyal, A.dzom Paylo Rinpoche. You see, the more we practice, and the more our devotion grows, and faith and devotion grows, then that's actually proportional to the blessings that we are receiving. So the more we open our heart, the greater, let's say, blessings we receive from these enlightened beings. So I hope that within time, right, I've been practicing this now for many years, that my heart has softened and gotten more, let's say, malleable to receive the Dharma in a more authentic way, both in person, in my meditation, in my sleep, but most importantly, in the way that I relate to people, that every day I'm a better person. That's what I aspire to. So, let me see. I believe that's all the questions I have here.
Excuse me, Tulku.
Yes.
There was a question in the chat
Mm-hmm.
From Pascal, Pays de Cézanne, asking about the prostrations.
Mm-hmm.
What does it mean exactly? And are you talking about full prostrations? And she was asking about the number 100,000.
Yes. Yeah. Great. I'll explain that in relation to each practice also. So, prostrations. Prostrations is actually a very old practice that goes back to the time of the Buddha. Essentially, you are offering homage with your body, speech, and mind to the Buddha. So with your body, you're engaging in the actual practice of offering full prostrations. And but maybe we, let's say, are physically not as youthful as we used to be. I'm, let's say, encountering that reality at this point in my age and having had some knee surgeries. And so offering prostrations maybe is more difficult. Well, if you can't offer full prostrations, then you still recite the refuge mantra, but then you would also do an extra Vajrasattva, the 100-syllable Vajrasattva mantra, if you can't do the full prostrations. If you can't engage in the Ngondro at that level, there are many, let's say, different skillful means. Another way would be to circumambulate a stupa as you're reciting the refuge and bodhicitta prayer. And in so doing, that would essentially count like a prostration. So there's those aspects. Now, traditionally, one would do that 100,000 times. And that would also apply to the Vajrasattva practice, the 100-syllable mantra. You would recite that 100,000 times. And then also with the mandala offering, you offer an actual physical mandala that with the prayer, and you do that 100,000 times. Now, the Che practice, you don't have to accumulate 100,000 times, but it's important to engage in, because it's actually by getting over our ego fixation or our self-identity, that's actually how we develop our Guru Yoga, right? The more we can merge with the Guru, then our ego fixation decreases. And so now in the Guru Yoga aspect, there's a mantra connected specifically with Yeshit Sogyal. And there you would do 100,000 for each syllable. But ideally, you go through in a stage-by-stage approach, refuge, bodhicitta, vajrasattva, mandala, che, and Guru Yoga. But you can also, let's say there's a tradition where you can accumulate all of them simultaneously. But if you do the simultaneous accumulation, I always feel it's best to, at the very least, do like an intensive period of just Guru Yoga, so that you can receive that like the full immersion of being in the Guru Yoga practice, I think, to receive the greatest benefit. So in terms of the prostrations, you do it 100,000 times, and it's a full prostration. That's what it is. Let's say what in Ngondro, that's what that means, the full prostration. Any other question? Well, maybe as the questions are coming in. Also, I think it's in Lama Sotram is also teaching the Ösel Nyingtig, and will also, let's say, every now and then come in and offer some instructions, and because this practice has also been important to her and her path. And so it's not just me that's teaching the Dakini Ngondro, and most importantly the Ösel Nyingtig. There's also Lama Rigzin, Lama Ann Klein is also offering practices in the Ösel Nyingtig. But we have, let's say, a large international Sangha from really all over the world. There are people in Korea, South Africa, Germany, France, Poland, Italy, London, the United States, and many more other places. And so we are, let's say, a global Sangha in the Ösel Nyingtig. And for the most part, we are able to teach the Ösel Nyingtig online. But for the instructions on Troma Nagmo, there is an actual empowerment where you receive the instructions in present with each other, not online. And so that's the only time. Why? Because up until now, that's the right. These are new teachings. These are new termas, so they haven't been fully codified. In the sense that not all aspects of the practice have been revealed yet. We are part of that, right? We are part of this revelation. Those who are engaging in the practice, and even those who are receiving, like the next secret instruction this year. A.dzom Rinpoche, he actually wants us to practice it and then report back to him what is happening for people. And then he will offer more instructions on that. And so that's based on that, let's say, cause and effect, right? So the cause of what we are doing in our practice has the effect of, let's say, revealing more teachings. And that's where our daily practice and receiving the blessings and progressing on the path is so important, because we are actually part of the revelation, which I think is very special. So let me just open up the chat. Okay, so if there are any questions, otherwise we can close. And then in the chat, you'll find different links to the upcoming retreats. And so Sylvie and Beatrice are organizing the retreat in France. And Ivana and Ella are organizing the retreat in Poland. And so those are, let's say, if you're Polish, you're relating to Ivana and Ella. And if you're French, you contact Sylvie and Beatrice or Bea. And I believe they will put maybe links into it so that you can just reach out to them directly if you have any other questions. But I really look forward to, for the most part, I've offered the Dakini Ngondro online. So this year we are going to be offering it in Germany, in Italy, and in France and Poland in person. And so I'm really excited about that opportunity because as you've probably all experienced, we are spending a lot of time in Zoom these days receiving Dharma teachings. And although it's incredibly convenient and like a lovely way to, let's say, make the teachings accessible, there's also something very special about coming together in person and connecting, right? On my end, I've just got a camera before me, so I'm like speaking into basic space. And I have a few pictures here of who's receiving. And so I'll see you nodding. I'll be like, oh, they're understanding what I'm saying. But there's something very special about being able to do it in person. And I'm looking forward to that opportunity. So thank you to all those who are organizing these different retreats in Europe. And there will also, you can receive it in person in Europe, but there will also be the opportunity to receive it again online this fall, in the late fall. I believe it's in beginning of December. But I don't believe we will have a, let's say, interpretation. It would just be in English. So this is your opportunity to receive it in your native language when we meet in person in these different countries. Okay. All right. So we will recite the closing prayers. It's not in this booklet. Let's see. Where is it? That's the beauty of computers. One can pull up the information very quickly. Okay, so we'll do the dedication prayer for after the teachings. So, by this merit, may all beings attain omniscience. May it defeat the enemy, wrongdoing. From the stormy waves of birth, old age, sickness, and death, from the ocean of samsara, may I free all beings. The courageous Manjushri, who knows everything as it is, and Samantabhadra, who also knows it in the same way, that I may follow in their path, I completely dedicate all this virtue. Thank you. And so if you don't have that prayer, you can just silently dedicate the merit, and whatever benefit has come from this encounter, we offer to all sentient beings without exception. Thank you, everyone. And I want to also, let's say, offer a special thank you to the tech support, to Sylvie for translating in French, and Ella for translating into Polish, and for all those unseen Dakas and Dakinis, Ivana and Helen. Thank you so much for supporting today, and most importantly, supporting these upcoming retreats. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tulkula, for your presence and beautiful explanations about Dakini Ngondro. And thank you all participants for being here. And let we meet soon at the retreats. Emaha.
Thank you. Well, have a wonderful evening for all the Europeans, and hope to see you soon. Take care. Ciao, as we say in Italian. Let me go to gallery view so I can see everyone. Okay. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Do zobaczenia.
All right. I'm going to leave. Ciao.
Thank you, Tulkula. See you soon.
Thank you, Sylvie.